AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée stay at my house during her weekend detox retreat. This all started a few weeks ago when my younger brother, Matt, told me that he and his fiancée, Jessica, were planning a weekend getaway, but they couldn't afford a hotel. He asked if she could come stay at my place instead. Now, a little context. I live alone in a small 2-bedroom apartment. My second bedroom is technically a guest room, but it's more of a makeshift office with a couch that folds out. I rarely have guests because my space is small and I like my privacy, especially on weekends. I told Matt I was uncomfortable hosting anyone for an entire weekend, especially someone I barely know. I've met Jessica a few times, and she seems nice, but she's extremely high maintenance. She's vegan, gluten-free, and has a very specific skincare routine that involves multiple steps and products, some of which she insists need to be in a certain temperature range. I also know from Matt that she's very particular about noise levels, temperature, and cleanliness. I felt like my cozy little apartment wasn't the right environment for that. Matt seemed disappointed, but didn't argue. A few days later, Jessica texted me directly. She explained that she was starting a detox weekend and needed a calm, quiet place to focus on her mental health, do some yoga, meditate, and follow a strict eating and bathing schedule. She asked if she could stay in my apartment for 2 nights, promising she would bring all her own food, cleaning supplies, and that she would barely need to interact with me. She also offered to pay me a small amount for inconvenience. I felt immediately uneasy. I don't mind helping family, but this felt like something more like hosting a guest with a very complicated set of demands rather than just helping my brother. I tried to explain gently, I understand this is important to you, but my apartment really isn't set up for hosting anyone, especially for a weekend where you have very specific routines. I also value my privacy and my space, and I'm not comfortable having someone stay here under these conditions. Jessica responded in a long message saying I was being selfish and that family should support each other. She said that 2 nights is not a long time and that it would be good karma for me to help her. She added that Matt has already been stressed about hotel costs and that he would really appreciate it if I did this. I didn't reply immediately because I was upset. I spoke to Matt, trying to be reasonable, and explained my side again. He said that he didn't want to pressure me, but he also said he wished I could just let her stay. He argued that it was only a weekend and that Jessica really needed this. I told him again that I wasn't comfortable and that I wanted to set boundaries with guests in my own home. The next day, Jessica called me. She was upset and said I was family but treating her like a stranger and accused me of not caring about Matt's feelings. She asked again, this time with more insistence, and even said she would just sleep on the couch quietly if I was worried about space. I finally sent a firm message. I'm sorry, but I cannot host you this weekend. I hope you understand that it's not personal. It's about my comfort and boundaries in my own home. I wish you well with your retreat. Jessica's response was, frankly, kind of a guilt trip. She said she was so disappointed in me, that I was making things very hard for Matt, and that I was choosing my convenience over family harmony. She also told Matt she was considering not coming to the wedding if I didn't change my mind. Matt came over later that evening to talk. He was frustrated and told me that Jessica was really upset and that he didn't want to fight with her. He said, you could just make one small exception. It's not a big deal. 2 nights, that's it. I tried to explain that my boundaries are not small exceptions. Letting her stay would make me uncomfortable and could create tension in my home. I also pointed out that it wasn't fair for me to feel guilty for protecting my own space. The conversation got tense. He said that maybe I was overreacting and that I didn't understand how important this retreat was to her. I reminded him that my discomfort is valid and that I'm allowed to say no. I also mentioned that hosting someone with very particular routines and high maintenance demands isn't a simple favor. It's stressful for me. Matt left angry and said he hoped I would reconsider. That night, Jessica sent another long message with bullet points about how staying in my apartment would benefit her mental health, her relationship with Matt, and even my personal growth by teaching me generosity. I didn't reply. The next day, Matt called to tell me that Jessica was upset enough that she was reconsidering coming to Matt's birthday dinner next week, and she implied that I was the reason. He sounded frustrated, but said he wasn't going to pressure me anymore. Since then, Matt has been distant, barely responding to texts, and Jessica unfollowed me on social media. A few mutual friends have hinted that I should try harder to accommodate her, or that I'm making things unnecessarily difficult for Matt. I honestly feel conflicted. I know my refusal has upset them, but I genuinely do not want to host Jessica. My home is my sanctuary, and I don't feel it's unreasonable to say no, especially when it involves complex routines that would stress me out. I'm worried that my family sees me as selfish, and I'm also anxious about the growing tension between Matt and me. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée stay at my apartment for her weekend detox retreat. Even though she claims it's for her mental health, and my brother wishes I would say yes. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to lend my parents my house when they lost their home. This is a long story, so I'll try to keep it as organized as possible. I, 32M, have been living in the same city for about 10 years. I bought a modest house a few years ago with some savings and a mortgage. It's not huge, but it's mine, and I worked hard to make it comfortable and stable. My parents, both in their late 50s, live in a different state, and I've always had a decent relationship with them, though it's been a little strained at times. About 6 months ago, my parents had a financial disaster. My mom's business went under, and my dad was forced into early retirement because of health problems. They were behind on bills and rent, and eventually they lost their home. I was devastated to hear this, of course, but I was also in a difficult position myself. My house, while paid for mostly through my savings and my mortgage, isn't enormous. I live alone, but I have plans to remodel and make some long-term improvements, and it's a significant financial and emotional investment for me. When they called me to explain the situation, they asked if they could move in with me temporarily while they got back on their feet. I said I would think about it, and the next day, I gave them a soft yes in principle, but explained some limitations. I told them that my house wasn't set up for 2 extra people long-term, that I would need some rules, and that I couldn't just completely hand over control of the place. They seemed okay with this at first. The first week was manageable. They moved in with a few of their belongings, but it quickly became overwhelming. My parents have very different habits from mine. My dad leaves things everywhere. He cooks huge meals that fill the kitchen with mess, and my mom is constantly reorganizing my furniture and helping in ways that disrupted my routines. They began expecting me to handle all household expenses beyond what I normally pay, like their groceries, utilities, and even cleaning supplies. When I tried to set limits, they argued that they were in crisis and that I shouldn't worry about money now because they trusted me. I tried to compromise, suggesting that we split groceries or that they could contribute when they got a small income. They refused, saying they didn't want to feel like they were owing me. I also asked that we maintain some personal boundaries, like keeping my office private and respecting my sleep schedule. That turned into arguments where they said I was being ungrateful and selfish because I already said yes to letting them live here. After a month, the tension became unbearable. They were constantly criticizing my house, my decorating choices, and my lifestyle. I started feeling like I couldn't relax in my own home, which I had worked years to create. I eventually told them that while I cared about them, this arrangement was not sustainable. I offered to help them find a small apartment nearby, and even offered some money for a deposit and first month's rent, but I said that living together indefinitely was not possible. That's when things got worse. They accused me of abandoning them in their time of need. My mom cried and said I was being cruel, while my dad called me ungrateful and selfish. They insisted that I was breaking family bonds by prioritizing my comfort over their well-being. They even threatened not to speak to me if I refused to let them stay. I stuck to my decision. I tried to explain that my house wasn't a hotel and that I needed my personal space and independence. I also pointed out that enabling them to live here indefinitely without contributing or respecting boundaries would hurt our relationship in the long term. I even offered to help them move and find resources like temporary housing or financial assistance. Now, several months later, they have moved into a small apartment that I helped them secure, but our relationship is strained. They still call me frequently to guilt me about my refusal to let them stay longer. And my extended family has begun to take sides. Some relatives say I should have done more, while others say I was right to set boundaries. I feel a mixture of guilt and frustration. I genuinely wanted to help them, but I also felt that letting them live in my home indefinitely would have destroyed my mental health and possibly my financial stability. I've always been close to my parents, but I don't think it's selfish to expect them to respect my space and contribute to the household. On the other hand, I can see how they might feel abandoned and hurt. So, AITA for refusing to let my parents live in my house indefinitely after they lost their home. AITA for refusing to help my sister financially after she made questionable life choices. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who has always had a bit of a chaotic streak when it comes to finances and decision-making. I'm generally pretty responsible with money. I have a stable job in marketing and own my apartment outright, but Emily has always leaned on me and our parents whenever things got rough. Lately, though, her requests for financial help have crossed the line, and I need an outside perspective. A few months ago, Emily moved to a new city to pursue a dream job she found online. The position was highly competitive and required her to relocate with very little notice. She was thrilled, and I was supportive, even helping her cover some of the moving costs. I thought of it as an investment in her future. When she arrived, she realized that the job wasn't what was advertised. Her salary was far lower than she had been told, and the role itself was very different from what she expected. I felt bad for her, but I also reminded her that these things happen and that she needed a plan for how to manage her finances in a new city. Fast forward a month, Emily called me in a panic. She had spent most of her savings on a fancy apartment downtown, furniture, and designer kitchenware because it's necessary for making a good impression at work. Her salary couldn't cover her rent, and she had no one else to turn to. She asked me to loan her $3,000. I was hesitant, but agreed to give her the money, partly because I didn't want her to be homeless, and partly because I thought this was a temporary fix. I explicitly told her it was a loan, not a gift, and that I expected repayment as soon as she was able. She agreed. A few weeks later, she called again. She had maxed out her credit cards, eaten out constantly, and signed up for multiple subscription services she claimed were essential for her career and social life. Now she needed another $2,000. I refused. I reminded her that I had already loaned her a substantial sum and that it was her responsibility to manage her spending. She accused me of being unsupportive and said I was punishing her for being ambitious. Since then, things have escalated. Emily started dating a new guy, who she often boasts about online. According to her posts, he is well off and treats her to expensive dinners, weekend trips, and gifts. A month ago, she asked me for another $1,500 to pay her rent because she wanted to use her bonus to go on a weekend getaway with him. I flat out refused. I explained that I am not her bank account and that I will not fund lifestyle choices that are not essential. Emily went on a tirade, calling me selfish, unsisterly, and controlling. She said I'm prioritizing my own comfort over her happiness and that family is supposed to support each other unconditionally. This argument spread to our parents. My mom called me, upset, and asked why I wasn't helping Emily. I explained the situation, emphasizing that Emily is financially irresponsible and expects me to bail her out whenever she overspends. My mom said I should just give her money, that sisters are supposed to support each other, and that I should stop being so rigid. I told her that while I love my sister, unconditional financial support is not something I can offer, especially when she refuses to change her spending habits. My mom then accused me of letting Emily fail and implied that I am morally wrong for not helping. Emily has since stopped speaking to me, and our parents seem disappointed. My friends mostly agree with me, saying that enabling her behavior will only make it worse. But I feel a pang of guilt. I keep wondering if I'm really being harsh or if I am justified in refusing to fund her lifestyle. On one hand, I want to help my sister and I hate seeing her struggle. On the other hand, I can see that she is making choices that are putting her in this position, and my help doesn't solve the underlying problem. I should also mention that my refusal to give her money has caused her to vent aggressively on social media, indirectly putting me in a negative light to mutual friends. She frames me as greedy and uncaring. I worry this may affect my relationships with people who don't know the full story. I've offered alternatives, helping her create a budget, finding side jobs, or even letting her stay at my apartment temporarily while she gets back on her feet. But she has rejected all of them, insisting that money is the only solution. I feel stuck. I want to help, but I also want to set boundaries. So, AITA for refusing to keep financially supporting my sister after she keeps making choices that put her in debt and then blaming me for it? Here's a summary of the key points. I loaned Emily $3,000 initially to help her avoid eviction after moving for a job that didn't pay as expected. She has repeatedly asked for more money to fund non-essential expenses, including travel, luxury items, and subscriptions. I refused further requests, setting clear boundaries and offering non-monetary support. Emily, my parents, and some mutual friends view me as selfish for not giving her money. I feel conflicted, but also recognize that enabling her behavior may be harmful in the long run. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she excluded me from her bridal party. I, 28F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emily, 25F. We grew up together, shared a bedroom until I moved out for college, and were inseparable during our teenage years. Over the past few years, our relationship has been mostly good, but we have definitely had the usual sibling disagreements. I'm usually the one who tries to smooth things over, and I've never really held grudges, but something happened recently that has left me feeling conflicted and angry. Emily got engaged about a year ago, and from the moment she announced it, she started talking about her wedding plans nonstop. She immediately created a dream team of bridesmaids, which included our mutual friends and a few cousins. But when she approached me, she told me she wasn't including me in the bridal party. Her reasoning was that she wanted a smaller group of bridesmaids and that she wanted to spread the love to friends who hadn't been in previous weddings. I was stunned because I had been in her wedding and she had been in mine, so it felt strange to be left out. I asked if there was a specific reason, and she said, "No, it's just logistics." I was hurt, but tried to brush it off. I told her I would still support her and help with wedding planning if she wanted, but I couldn't help feeling like I was being pushed aside. As time went on, it became clear that her focus was entirely on her friends and extended family. Invitations for planning sessions, dress fittings, and bridal events all went to her chosen bridesmaids. I wasn't even invited to a pre-wedding brunch she was hosting. Then things got worse. Emily and her fiancé started sending out contribution suggestions for the wedding. They wanted everyone in the bridal party to chip in for certain things, including a portion of the rehearsal dinner, bridesmaid dresses, and a weekend getaway. The total came out to over $1,500 per person. Since I wasn't in the bridal party, I assumed I wouldn't be expected to contribute. A few weeks later, Emily called me and said, "Hey, the wedding is coming up, and we'd love if you helped with decorations and flowers. We're expecting you to cover your share of the flowers you'll be arranging." I asked for clarification. She explained that even though I wasn't a bridesmaid, I would still need to contribute financially if I wanted to be involved. I was shocked. I told her that I didn't mind helping, but I couldn't justify paying thousands of dollars for a wedding where I wasn't even included in the bridal party. Emily got extremely upset. She accused me of being selfish, not supporting her, and even trying to make her wedding about me. She said that family should always help each other, and that I was hurting her feelings by refusing to contribute. I explained that I was happy to help in ways that didn't involve paying for the wedding, like helping with setup, assisting with planning, or even hosting small events leading up to the wedding. But I refused to pay the amounts she was asking for, especially since I wasn't being treated as part of the inner circle. Things escalated when our parents got involved. They tried to mediate and suggested that I pay at least a portion, saying it would look bad if I didn't. I reminded them that I had already supported Emily emotionally throughout the planning and offered to volunteer my time, but I still didn't feel it was fair to spend a huge sum just because she wanted me to. They were disappointed, but didn't force me to pay. The day of the wedding, I attended as a guest. I helped with minor tasks leading up to the ceremony, like setting up chairs and arranging flowers that didn't require my personal funds, but I made a point of keeping my involvement voluntary and low cost. Emily was noticeably cold toward me, barely acknowledging my presence, and even during the reception, she avoided including me in group photos with the bridal party. It was clear she was still upset. After the wedding, I received multiple messages from Emily expressing her anger and disappointment. She said that by not paying, I had embarrassed her in front of her friends and made her feel unsupported. She also brought up past instances where I had helped her financially or with events, implying that I was being inconsistent and unfair. I reminded her that I had always helped voluntarily and that I had never been asked to pay a share of anything before. I also pointed out that the context here was different. This was her wedding. She had chosen not to include me in the bridal party, and the amount she was asking was significant. Some friends and extended family have told me I might have overreacted and that I should have found a way to contribute to maintain family harmony. Others have said that Emily's expectations were unreasonable and that she shouldn't have demanded money from someone who wasn't a bridesmaid. I genuinely feel conflicted. I love my sister, and I want her to be happy, but I also feel like her approach was unfair and manipulative. I haven't spoken much to Emily since the wedding. She occasionally texts me, but in a very formal and distant way. I worry that our relationship might be permanently damaged over this, which makes me feel guilty, but I still can't justify paying for a wedding where I wasn't included in the core events. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she excluded me from her bridal party. Character count, 6,514. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what happened with my niece. I, 32F, have always been extremely close to my younger sister, Lily, 29F. We grew up in a small town and were practically inseparable. When she got engaged last year, I was thrilled for her and immediately started helping with the wedding planning. I even offered to host a bridal shower at my apartment and spent countless weekends assisting with decorations, dress fittings, and coordinating with vendors. Everything seemed fine until about 2 months ago, when a family situation put me in a very uncomfortable position. Lily has a daughter, Emma, who is 8. She's a sweet kid most of the time, but she can be very stubborn and has a tendency to act out when she doesn't get her way. I've babysat Emma plenty of times, so I know her personality well. About 2 months ago, Lily asked me to watch Emma for a weekend because she had a last-minute trip for wedding-related errands. I agreed without hesitation because I genuinely enjoy spending time with my niece. The weekend started off normally, but by the second day, Emma began demanding that we do activities her way, refusing to eat meals she didn't pick, and generally being very defiant. I tried to reason with her, explaining that there would be consequences if she continued acting out, but she completely ignored me. At one point, she threw a plate across the kitchen because I wouldn't let her have candy for breakfast. I was shocked and immediately took the plate away and explained that such behavior is unacceptable. She screamed at me and called me mean. Things escalated further that evening. Emma had a tantrum because she wanted to stay up late to watch a movie she wasn't allowed to see. She ended up smashing her tablet on the floor in anger. At this point, I felt I was in over my head. I called Lily to explain what was happening, thinking she would understand and maybe offer advice. Instead, she got angry with me. She accused me of being too harsh and said I didn't know how to handle kids properly. She told me that I had traumatized Emma and that she would make sure I never babysit again. I tried to explain that I had been firm but calm and that her daughter had destroyed property and behaved aggressively, but she wouldn't listen. I returned Emma to Lily that Sunday, feeling frustrated and hurt. I thought Lily might at least acknowledge how difficult the situation had been and thank me for taking care of Emma, but she didn't. Instead, she called me a week later and said that since I clearly can't manage children, she didn't want me involved in any wedding events where Emma would be present, including the rehearsal dinner and the wedding itself. She said that she couldn't risk Emma being upset or embarrassed in front of guests because of me. I was blindsided. I've never had an issue with Emma in the past, and this was literally one weekend. I tried to talk to Lily, explaining that I was hurt by her reaction and that I had only tried to enforce boundaries for Emma's behavior. I reminded her that I had spent countless hours helping plan her wedding and had always been there for her. But she refused to budge, saying that it was too late to change her mind. Feeling frustrated and unappreciated, I told her that if she didn't want me at the wedding, then I wouldn't come. I didn't want to attend a celebration where I felt unwelcome and blamed for something that wasn't entirely my fault. Lily was furious and started sending messages to our extended family, implying that I had abandoned her on the most important day of her life and that I was being selfish. Now, some family members are taking her side, saying that I should just attend for the sake of family unity and let bygones be bygones. Others understand why I'm upset, pointing out that I went out of my way to help her and her daughter and was essentially punished for it. I feel torn because I love my sister and I don't want to miss her wedding, but I also feel that attending would mean accepting unfair treatment and being around someone who openly resents me. Adding to the tension, my parents are involved. They're upset with me for refusing to attend and keep saying things like, "You can't let a child come between you and your sister," and "It's just one day. You should swallow your pride." I tried explaining that it's not about Emma personally, but about Lily's lack of appreciation and the way she blamed me entirely for a situation that was partly beyond my control. My parents haven't accepted this explanation and keep pressuring me. To complicate matters further, a few of my friends who know about the situation have been suggesting that I attend the wedding, maintain a polite distance from Lily and Emma, and avoid conflict. But I keep thinking about how hurtful it was to be accused of traumatizing my niece, and how Lily has made it clear she doesn't want me there. I can't shake the feeling that showing up would just validate her behavior and make me feel worse. I've considered sending a gift and a card as a gesture, but even that feels insufficient given the effort I put into helping plan everything. I also worry that refusing to attend might permanently damage my relationship with Lily and Emma, but I honestly don't feel that I can go without feeling deeply uncomfortable and unfairly judged. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated me after that weekend with my niece. I feel like I'm standing up for myself, but my family thinks I'm overreacting and being petty. I want to maintain a relationship with Lily in the long term, but I also feel like I need to protect my own mental health and not be around someone who resents me so openly. I just don't know if this decision makes me the bad guy in this scenario. AITA for refusing to let my brother's kids stay at my house for an extended period, even though he claims I'm being unfair. I, 32F, have always had a strained relationship with my younger brother, Sam, 28M. Growing up, he was the type who would push boundaries constantly, and our parents would usually shield him from consequences. I've always been the more responsible sibling, and I've worked hard to create a life for myself that is calm, organized, and predictable. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city, and I genuinely enjoy my space and routines. Sam has 3 kids, ages 3, 6, and 8, and his life is chaotic to say the least. He works long hours as a contractor and is constantly taking on side jobs to make ends meet. He rarely plans anything, is often late, and tends to rely on others to handle responsibilities he should be managing himself. Over the years, I've helped him out with the kids occasionally, babysitting for a few hours or dropping them off at school when he had an emergency, but it's always been clear that I'm willing to help for short-term situations, not to become a regular caregiver. About a month ago, Sam reached out to me with a long-winded text saying that he needed me to watch the kids for a while. I asked what he meant by a while, and he explained that he had taken on a project out of state and it would last at least 6 weeks, possibly longer. He said he couldn't find anyone else to help and that he had no one else to turn to. I was honest and told him that 6 weeks is far beyond what I could handle. He tried to convince me by saying he would pay me for my trouble and that the kids were well-behaved, implying that it wouldn't be a huge deal. I reminded him that I have my own work schedule and life commitments, and I cannot just drop everything for over a month. He insisted, saying, "You're their aunt. Family helps each other," and accused me of being selfish. I tried to compromise. I suggested maybe a weekend here and there, or even a week at most, but he seemed adamant that it had to be the entire 6 weeks. I also asked him if he had considered other options like a local daycare, neighbors, or friends. And he said he had, but none of those options were suitable. I tried to explain that his children need stability, especially for their routines and schooling, and uprooting them for over a month to stay in an unfamiliar environment with me could be more disruptive than helpful. Sam didn't accept that and told me that I was overthinking it and that I should just step up for the family. We argued over text for a few days. He kept saying that it wasn't fair that I wouldn't help him when he had helped me countless times in the past. I reminded him that I never committed to long-term childcare, that helping someone occasionally isn't the same as taking on their full responsibilities for over a month. He got really upset and accused me of holding grudges and being resentful. I even tried to bring up that my apartment is small, and having 3 children in it for 6 weeks would be overwhelming and possibly unsafe at times because I don't have much space or the right setup for kids. But he brushed it off. The final straw came when he sent me a message saying, "I guess you'd rather be comfortable than actually help your family. The kids will remember that you weren't there for them when they needed you." That message really hurt because while I love my nieces and nephews, I also have to consider my own mental health, my work, and my ability to maintain a stable environment. I explained all of this one last time, and I said that I simply cannot take them in for 6 weeks and that he would need to make other arrangements. I suggested a few resources like temporary daycare, a trusted neighbor, or hiring a professional babysitter. Since then, he hasn't spoken to me directly, but he's been posting things on social media about family members who never step up and aunts who only care about themselves, which I know is about me. My parents think I handled it well and that I shouldn't be guilted into taking responsibility for his poor planning. But some of my friends say I could have been more accommodating since it's family. I don't think it's realistic to expect someone to take care of 3 kids for 6 weeks with no prior notice, especially when I live alone and have a busy work schedule. I feel torn because part of me wonders if I'm being harsh or if I could have done more, but I also feel that my boundaries are valid. I don't want to create resentment between Sam and me, but I also don't want to sacrifice my own stability. I guess my main question is, am I the asshole for refusing to take in my brother's kids for 6 weeks, even though he says it's for the sake of family? AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after she left her abusive husband? I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, we shared a room, did everything together, and even went to the same college. We have a strong bond, and I've always been the responsible one, while Emily has a more impulsive streak. About 2 years ago, she married Tom, 30M, who seemed nice at first but turned out to be controlling and emotionally abusive. I could see the red flags early on, but Emily was in love and refused to listen. Things came to a head last year when Emily called me in tears, saying that Tom had hit her during an argument. I immediately told her she needed to leave and stay somewhere safe. She ended up staying with me for a few weeks before finding a temporary place on her own. During that time, she talked a lot about wanting a fresh start and even hinted that she might want to move in with me permanently until she got back on her feet. I hesitated because I had my own life to manage. My apartment isn't huge. I work full-time, and I've been saving for a big trip, but I didn't want to leave her stranded. After some thought, I told her that moving in permanently wasn't a good idea. My reasoning was simple. My apartment is a 1-bedroom, and having her here long-term would be stressful for both of us. I offered her short-term help, maybe a month or 2 until she found a stable place, but I made it clear that I wasn't comfortable with an indefinite arrangement. She agreed at first and moved into a small rental she found, but things started going downhill again. Emily's ex, Tom, began harassing her online and showing up at her rental. She called me almost daily, panicked, and asking if she could come back. Every time I tried to suggest alternatives, staying with a friend, getting a restraining order, contacting a local women's shelter, she would cry and insist she couldn't manage on her own. About 3 weeks ago, she showed up at my door unannounced, dragging a suitcase, and told me she had nowhere else to go. She said she'd only stay temporarily until she figured something out, but I knew from experience that temporarily for her often meant months. I told her honestly that I couldn't let her move back in. I explained that my apartment is small, I have work commitments, and I had already helped her get a place. I also said that coming back now, without a plan, wouldn't help her long term. It would just put both of us under a lot of stress. She started crying and accused me of abandoning her when she needed me most. I offered to help her financially for a deposit or help her call shelters or friends who might take her. But she refused and left angrily, saying she didn't know why I was being so cruel. Since then, my family has been divided. Our parents think I'm being too harsh and should just let her stay. They say that blood comes first and that I need to prioritize her safety over my comfort. My partner, 36M, supports me, saying that while he sympathizes with Emily's situation, letting her move and would create tension and potentially damage our relationship. A few days ago, Emily posted on social media about being abandoned by the only person who could help me. She didn't mention names, but it's clearly about me. Some mutual friends have reached out to ask why I wouldn't let her stay, and I'm starting to feel guilty. I know she's in a terrible spot, and I hate that she's struggling. On the other hand, I also know that if I let her move back in, it could turn into months of me juggling her emotional crises while also trying to manage my own life. I've been reading about boundaries and the importance of not enabling toxic cycles, but it's hard not to feel like I'm failing as a sister. Emily hasn't contacted me directly since that day, but I keep thinking about her. Part of me wants to relent and invite her back in, but another part knows that it would likely make both our lives worse in the long run. I'm torn because I want to help her, but I also need to protect my own space and mental health. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after leaving her abusive husband, even though she says she has nowhere else to go. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of being pushed aside by our family. This has been building for a long time, and I'm not proud of how it's all come to a head, but I feel like I finally need to share my side. I'm 32, and my sister is 28. Growing up, it always felt like my parents and extended family were more invested in her than in me. She's talented, outgoing, and excels at everything she does. I'm quieter and tend to struggle with social situations in school, so I never really got the same praise or encouragement. I know it sounds petty, but it really shaped my relationship with my family. When my sister started dating her now fiancé, the favoritism became even more obvious. They would plan trips and parties that I wasn't invited to. Even small things, like my parents talking about her achievements or her stories, would always overshadow anything I tried to share. I tried to accept it, thinking it was just how things were, but it became really hard when I was ignored or dismissed at family gatherings. Fast forward a few years, my sister got engaged, and the wedding planning began. From the start, I felt excluded. They didn't ask me for opinions, didn't include me in the bridal shower planning, and only called me at the last minute for some minor errands. When I tried to gently express that I wanted to be more involved, my parents brushed me off, saying, "It's her day. She gets to choose." I understood that, of course, but it still hurt to be completely sidelined. Things reached a breaking point a few months ago. My sister and her fiancé asked me to be their maid of honor. Initially, I was shocked and kind of relieved. Maybe this was finally my chance to feel included. But then the reality of what they expected started to sink in. They wanted me to organize events I couldn't realistically manage, spend thousands of dollars I didn't have on dresses and trips, and essentially handle all the logistics while they enjoyed the process. When I hesitated and explained my financial situation, they insisted, saying, "It's fine, we'll help," but the tone felt more like guilt-tripping than genuine support. Around the same time, I realized that the reason they were pushing so hard for me to participate was because my absence would be noticeable in photos and to family members. They weren't including me to honor me or my relationship with my sister. They wanted appearances. That realization crushed me. I confronted my sister and tried to explain how I felt, that I didn't want to participate just for the sake of appearances, and that years of being sidelined made me wary of being treated as a prop in someone else's celebration. Her response was, bluntly, that I was being dramatic and that I was ruining the wedding experience for her. My parents sided with her, accusing me of selfishness and jealousy. They said that I was overreacting and that this was a once-in-a-lifetime event that I would regret missing. I tried to explain that my decision wasn't about missing a party but about protecting myself from being hurt and disrespected yet again. They didn't understand, and the arguments escalated over several weeks. Eventually, I decided to decline the role of maid of honor and also told them I would not be attending the wedding at all. I offered to send a personal gift and write a heartfelt letter to my sister explaining my feelings, hoping it might ease the tension. The reaction was catastrophic. My sister unfriended me on social media. My parents stopped speaking to me except when forced, and a few extended family members started taking sides, some saying I was cruel and selfish. Since then, I've been struggling with mixed emotions. Part of me feels relieved because I'm no longer in a position where I have to sacrifice my comfort, finances, and emotional well-being to appease a family that has consistently treated me as secondary. Another part of me feels guilty because I know my absence has caused my sister pain, and I can't help but wonder if I overreacted. I've spoken to a therapist about this, and they've helped me understand that boundaries are important, especially when a family dynamic has a history of neglect or favoritism. I also understand that my decision to stay away might create permanent rifts, but I'm finding it increasingly difficult to participate in family events where I feel invisible or instrumentalized. Recently, my parents reached out to beg me to attend at least the ceremony, promising that no one would ask me to do anything beyond showing up. They also insisted that my presence would make my sister happy. I explained again that it wasn't about the specific tasks, but about the long history of being undervalued, and that attending now might feel performative rather than genuine. They didn't respond well, but I haven't budged. I keep asking myself if I'm truly in the wrong here. I understand why my family thinks I am, and I understand why my sister feels hurt, but I also know that agreeing to attend under these circumstances would come at a significant emotional cost for me. My hope is that by standing my ground, I can eventually rebuild relationships on a more honest foundation, though I'm bracing for the reality that some relationships might be irreparable. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding, even though it's causing a huge family conflict. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to lend my car to my brother, even though he insists he desperately needs it. So, here's the situation. I, 28F, live in a medium-sized city, and I own a car that I worked really hard to buy and pay off. It's not a luxury car by any means, but it's reliable, and I treat it well because it's my primary way of getting to work, running errands, and just generally getting around. I live alone, and my parents and brother live in another city about an hour away. My brother, Mark, 26M, has always been a little careless with money and responsibilities, but I usually try to help him out when I can. Mark called me last week out of the blue, sounding very stressed. He said his car had broken down and the repairs would cost more than he could afford. He has a part-time job and freelances on the side, but nothing steady, so money is always tight. He asked if he could borrow my car for a couple of weeks while he figures out a solution. I hesitated because I rely on my car every day, but I wanted to be sympathetic, so I said I'd think about it. The next day, Mark started texting me constantly about how desperate he was. He said he couldn't get to work, he had appointments, and he really didn't have another option. I explained again that I use the car daily and that I can't really lend it for weeks at a time. I suggested he look into car rental services or even public transportation or see if a friend could help. He responded angrily, saying I was being selfish and that he thought family should help each other. At this point, I told him clearly that I wouldn't be lending the car. I offered to help him research cheaper repair options or see if he could finance the repairs in smaller installments. I even offered to drive him to work a few times if I was free, but I made it clear the car wasn't going anywhere long-term. He accused me of playing favorites because I supposedly had lent our other brother a car before. This part confused me because, yes, I did lend our older brother a car once, but it was a completely different situation. He was helping me move, only needed it for a day, and I knew he'd take care of it. Mark doesn't seem to see the distinction. Things escalated when Mark started sending me passive-aggressive messages about how I was always thinking about myself and how he can't believe I'd turn him down when he's in need. I tried to stay calm and explain my side, but he refused to listen. Our parents got involved after he vented to them. They called me and said I should reconsider because it's family, and I felt torn because I don't want to create tension with him either. I explained my reasons again, emphasizing that the car is essential for my work and responsibilities, and that lending it for an indefinite period would create stress and risk for me. They seemed sympathetic, but kept hinting that I was being too rigid and needed to make a sacrifice for family. I decided to stand my ground. I didn't want to be forced into lending something that could impact my life negatively, even for family. I offered other forms of help, helping him search for a used car, assisting with budgeting, even giving him a small loan to get temporary transportation like a scooter. None of this satisfied him, and now he's barely speaking to me. Our parents are upset too, saying I should have been more generous and that I'm letting pride get in the way of helping family. I honestly feel conflicted. On one hand, I want to support my family, but I also feel like Mark is being manipulative and guilt-tripping me into giving up something that is important to me. I don't think I'm unreasonable for needing to protect my own stability and resources, especially when he has options I suggested that don't involve me losing my car. So AITA here? Should I have lent him my car, even though it would have caused me stress and inconvenience, just to avoid upsetting my brother and parents? Or am I justified in refusing and offering alternative support? Instead, this situation has really strained my relationship with Mark and put me in an uncomfortable spot with my parents, and I want to handle it without escalating further, but I also don't want to compromise my own needs for the sake of family guilt. Has anyone else been in a similar situation, and how did you navigate it without feeling like you were being selfish? AITA for refusing to forgive my brother for ruining my wedding? I never thought I would be in this position, but here I am, questioning whether I'm actually the bad guy in this situation. My brother, Ryan, and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, he was the golden child in our parents' eyes, smart, charismatic, and always getting away with things, while I struggled with anxiety and was often overshadowed. Despite this, I loved him, and we had moments of closeness that made up for the rest. But I always knew there was a streak of selfishness in him that would surface at the worst possible times. Fast forward to last year, when I got engaged to my partner, Alex. From the very beginning, I wanted our wedding to be intimate but memorable. I'm someone who appreciates detail, and I spent nearly a year planning every aspect of our big day, from the flowers to the playlist to the seating arrangements. We both agreed on a guest list that was deliberately small, including only close family and a few friends, because we wanted the day to feel personal. I had informed Ryan early on that we would be keeping the guest list tight. He seemed fine with it, even jokingly saying, "I'll behave and not bring anyone unexpected." I trusted him. The problem started when he arrived at the wedding with his new girlfriend, who I had never met and who wasn't invited. At first, I thought maybe there had been a misunderstanding. I approached him quietly and whispered, "Ryan, she's not on the guest list. You can't bring her." He laughed and said, "Relax, it's just one person. Everyone will love her." I was stunned. Not only was this against my wishes, but it also disrupted the flow of the day. We had carefully planned the seating and catering, and suddenly there was an unaccounted-for guest. I tried to reason with him, but he brushed me off and went back to mingling, clearly enjoying the chaos he had caused. Later, during the ceremony, things got even worse. Alex and I had a special moment planned, a reading from our favorite poem, just the two of us in front of our guests. Midway through, Ryan decided it would be funny to interrupt by loudly clearing his throat, then jokingly asking if anyone else felt like reciting something. I was mortified. Alex was embarrassed, and several guests whispered, trying to hold back laughter. I wanted to disappear. I felt humiliated in front of my family and friends, and the moment we had meticulously prepared was completely ruined. After the ceremony, I confronted him in private, trying to stay calm. I told him that what he did was incredibly disrespectful and hurtful. His response was, "You're overreacting. It was all in good fun. You got to lighten up." I couldn't believe it. The reception didn't get any better. Ryan made several inappropriate jokes during the toasts, ignored the seating plan, and even ended up spilling red wine on the dress of my maid of honor. I was so angry that I couldn't even enjoy the reception. Alex kept trying to calm me down, but I could see the disappointment in their eyes. After the wedding, I told Ryan that his behavior had been unacceptable and that I needed some space. He seemed to think a few perfunctory apologies would be enough and continued texting and calling me. I didn't respond. Weeks went by, and the tension was unbearable. My parents tried to mediate, saying, Ryan didn't mean any harm. He's just playful, but I couldn't forgive him that easily. This wasn't a playful prank. It was a blatant disregard for something that mattered deeply to me. Fast forward to the holidays. The family gathering was approaching, and I informed Ryan that I wasn't ready to be around him yet. He called me multiple times, left voice messages expressing how hurt he was that I wasn't talking to him, and even sent flowers with a note saying, I just want my sister back. I didn't respond. The rest of the family started pressuring me, accusing me of holding a grudge, saying that I should forgive and forget because family is important, and he didn't really ruin the wedding on purpose. I tried explaining that it wasn't about a single incident. It was the accumulation of his selfishness and disregard for my feelings, but no one seemed to take it seriously. They kept saying that weddings are stressful and that I should just let it go. It's now been almost a year since the wedding, and I still haven't fully forgiven him. Ryan occasionally texts me during birthdays or holidays, but I don't respond. Alex is supportive, but even they admit that they wish I could reconcile because our family is strained. I know some people would say I'm being too harsh or that I should let go for the sake of family harmony, but I feel like forgiving him too easily would invalidate my feelings and set a precedent that he can disrespect me whenever he wants without consequences. On the other hand, I can't help but wonder if I'm overreacting and if I'm letting this one day define my relationship with my brother entirely. I love my brother, but I also value my boundaries and my special moments. I can't decide whether holding on to this anger makes me the bad person or if it's justified to protect myself from someone who repeatedly disregards my feelings. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to forgive my brother for ruining my wedding? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated my husband? My sister, Jenna, and I have had a complicated relationship for most of our lives. Growing up, she was always the golden child, the one our parents bragged about, while I was the quiet, overlooked sibling. Over the years, we've had our ups and downs, but after I got married to my husband, Mark, things became noticeably tense between her and him. Mark and I have been together for 6 years, married for 4. From the beginning, Jenna has made subtle comments about him, which I mostly tried to brush off as sibling rivalry or jealousy. It started with small remarks like, "Are you sure she's right for you?" or "I don't think anyone really understands you like I do." But over time, it escalated. She would question his career, criticize his hobbies, and even make snide comments about the way he dresses or talks. At first, I defended him, but it was exhausting constantly having to manage these microaggressions. The tipping point came last year during Thanksgiving. Jenna had invited her fiancé, Tom, my parents, Mark, and me to her parents' house. The entire dinner, she repeatedly made passive-aggressive remarks directly at Mark. She commented on the food we brought, implying we didn't know how to cook properly. She mocked his career achievements in front of everyone, saying, "Well, at least someone here is still trying, unlike some people who just sit at desks all day." Our parents laughed awkwardly, and I felt my face burn with embarrassment. I tried to confront her later privately, but she brushed me off, saying I was overreacting and that Mark needed to toughen up. Fast forward to 6 months ago, Jenna got engaged and started planning her wedding. I was hopeful that this would be a new chapter for our relationship, but it quickly became apparent that she intended to exclude Mark from almost everything. She invited me to bridal shop appointments, cake tastings, and venue visits, but would constantly say things like, "You don't need to bring Mark, it's just girl stuff," or "I'm keeping the planning private. It's easier without him there." I tried to be understanding, thinking maybe she just wanted some sister time, but I started noticing the pattern. Mark wasn't welcome at any pre-wedding event. The wedding guest list was another issue. Jenna sent me a draft invite list and had written Mark's name in a way that made it clear he wasn't considered part of the main event. He was listed separately, under +1, almost as if he were an afterthought. When I mentioned it, she said, "Don't be dramatic. It's just how he organized it. You know I love you both." But I knew that wasn't true. Things came to a head a month ago when she asked me to help with seating arrangements. I brought up including Mark properly with our mutual friends who are also invited, but she said, "I just don't see the point. He's fine where he is. Why make a big deal out of nothing?" I tried to explain that being treated as an afterthought at her wedding would be humiliating for him and would make me uncomfortable attending, but she responded with, "If you can't handle a little joke, maybe you shouldn't come at all." At this point, I felt trapped. I didn't want to create a scene on her big day, but I also couldn't ignore how deliberately exclusionary she was being toward my husband. I told her that we would not attend the wedding unless Mark was treated as an equal guest, not a token plus one. She blew up, saying I was being unreasonable, controlling, and selfish. She accused me of trying to ruin her wedding and said she didn't want Mark's negativity at all. I stood firm. I explained that this wasn't about controlling her wedding or spoiling her day. It was about mutual respect and acknowledging my husband as part of my life. She called me dramatic and refused to compromise. I informed her that we would not attend if Mark couldn't be treated with respect. She then unfollowed me on social media, blocked my phone calls for a few days, and sent passive-aggressive messages through our parents. Our parents tried to mediate, saying I was overreacting and that Jenna was just stressed. I argued that being stressed doesn't give someone permission to humiliate another person publicly. Mark and I agreed that we could not attend a wedding where he would feel unwelcome and disrespected. The fallout has been messy. Jenna has told friends and extended family that I refused to attend for no reason and that I made it about Mark. I've received messages from cousins and distant relatives expressing disappointment, asking why we're not attending, and some have even sided with Jenna. My parents are disappointed too, though they understand my perspective privately. I feel sad because I wanted to support my sister and be part of her big day, but I also feel justified in standing up for my husband and myself. I've tried explaining my side calmly, but it seems like Jenna only wants to see it from her perspective. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated my husband? I feel caught between family loyalty and protecting my marriage, and it's tearing me up inside. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disowned me over a misunderstanding? I've never posted on here before, but I'm honestly at my wit's end and need an outside perspective. I'll try to make this as detailed as possible because it's complicated, but I promise to stick to the facts. So here goes. I, 29F, have a sister, Jenna, 32F, who I used to be very close with growing up. We were the kind of siblings who shared everything, had each other's backs, and spent most of our time together. We drifted a bit in our mid-20s after I moved to a different city for work, but I always thought we maintained a solid relationship. Jenna has always been very controlling and perfectionistic, which sometimes clashed with my more laid-back personality, but I thought I could handle it. I've always tried to compromise where I could. About 6 months ago, Jenna got engaged to her now fiancé, Mark, 34M. Right after the engagement, she started talking about wedding planning, and I tried to help in any way I could. I don't have much experience with weddings, but I'm organized and creative, so I offered to help with decorations, guest lists, and general planning. Jenna was appreciative initially, but I quickly noticed her behavior toward me was changing. She started micromanaging everything I did and criticized my ideas harshly, even in front of other family members. I tried to brush it off, thinking she was stressed and didn't mean anything personal. Then came the issue with the bridal shower. I have a friend, Lisa, who I've known for over a decade. She's incredibly supportive and has been a part of almost every milestone in my life. When Jenna asked me to help organize the bridal shower, I invited Lisa to assist, thinking it would be fun to have someone I trusted around since Jenna had been very tense. I explicitly told Jenna that Lisa was coming to help, and she agreed initially. Things started to spiral when Jenna began assigning tasks to Lisa without consulting her. Lisa is outspoken and won't hesitate to speak her mind if she feels something is unfair or poorly planned. During one of the planning sessions, Lisa pointed out that some of Jenna's ideas were impractical, and she suggested alternatives. Jenna snapped at Lisa, saying she didn't want advice and that everything was already planned. Lisa apologized and stayed quiet, but Jenna seemed furious afterward. Later, Jenna told me that she felt disrespected and embarrassed in front of our family members, even though she was the one who had initially asked for help. I tried to mediate and explain that Lisa didn't mean any harm, but Jenna refused to listen and started blaming me for bringing someone in to sabotage her wedding. I was shocked, and we had a huge argument that day. After that incident, Jenna stopped speaking to me unless it was about something she wanted me to do. She ignored my texts for days at a time, and every interaction felt tense. I continued helping with certain tasks because I didn't want to completely give up on my sister, but it was obvious that she was resentful. Then came the final straw, the guest list. I had been handling RSVPs and seating arrangements because Jenna was overwhelmed, and I had suggested a couple of seating adjustments to make everyone comfortable. One of my suggestions involved placing some distant relatives who had a reputation for being loud and difficult at the back of the venue. Jenna found out about the change and completely lost it. She accused me of hiding people from her wedding and controlling her day without permission. I tried to explain that it was a small logistical change and that my only goal was to make her day run smoothly, but she wouldn't listen. That night, she sent me a message that was basically a disowning. She said she didn't want me involved in the wedding at all and that she no longer considered me her sister. I was in complete shock. I tried calling, texting, even reaching out to our parents to mediate, but Jenna refused to speak to me. Fast forward to last week, I found out the wedding is happening in 2 weeks. Our parents asked me if I was planning to attend. I told them that after being told I wasn't welcome and after everything that happened, I didn't feel comfortable going. I explained that I didn't want to force myself into a family event where the bride explicitly didn't want me there. My parents are upset with me. They say I should go for the sake of family unity, that I should put aside petty arguments for one day, and that I'm making things worse by staying away. My friends are divided. Some say I'm right for protecting my own mental health, while others argue that I should swallow my pride for my sister. I'm torn because I still love my sister, and I feel guilty about missing such a major milestone in her life, but I also can't shake the feeling that attending would be humiliating and emotionally draining. I have tried multiple times to apologize and make amends, but Jenna has refused to engage. I've considered sending a gift, a heartfelt card, or even a video message, but I feel like it might not be enough or could even make things worse if she interprets it as guilt-tripping. I'm starting to wonder if I should just accept that my sister doesn't want me in her life right now and step back, or if I should push myself to attend her wedding despite how badly I was treated. I don't want to escalate family tensions, but I also feel like I need to protect myself from being treated as a villain for simply trying to help. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she explicitly disowned me over what I thought was a misunderstanding. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what happened on my mother's birthday. So, this is going to be long because I need to provide the full context. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, and our relationship has always been complicated. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the one who followed rules, did well in school, and generally tried to keep the peace in the family. Emily was always the more rebellious, attention-seeking sibling. And while I tried to be supportive, it sometimes felt like I was carrying a disproportionate amount of emotional labor in our family. Our mother, Linda, 55F, has always been very controlling and emotionally manipulative. She has a habit of pitting us against each other and making everything about her. I've tried to maintain boundaries, but sometimes it's been impossible because the family dynamic is so intense. Emily, on the other hand, thrives in that chaos and seems to get a lot of validation from it. Fast forward to last month. It was my mother's birthday. I knew Emily was planning something for her, but I thought it would be nice to have a family dinner where we could all celebrate together. I spent the week leading up to it preparing a special meal, decorating the house, and even making a small handmade gift for my mom. I was excited because, despite all the usual tension, I genuinely wanted this birthday to be a happy memory. On the day of the birthday, everything started fine. My mom seemed happy. Emily arrived late, as usual, and at first, she brought a store-bought gift that seemed harmless. Things started to go downhill when Emily decided that her gift presentation needed to be dramatic. She brought a scrapbook she had made, full of pictures and memories she curated from our childhood, and insisted that we go through it page by page in front of everyone. That in itself was okay, except that she started making extremely pointed comments about me throughout the presentation. She singled out moments where she claimed I stole the spotlight or ruined her achievements. She brought up things from elementary school and high school, mocking my interests, choices, and even the way I dressed at certain events. My mother laughed along and made jokes that felt like they were more at Emily's expense, but also subtly made fun of me. I tried to ignore it, hoping it was just typical sibling teasing, but kept escalating. By the time we got to a page that showed a picture of me at my high school graduation, Emily said, "Look at her, so proud of herself," thinking she was the star of the family when really she just followed all the rules and never had fun. My mother chimed in, laughing, saying something like, "Yes, always the responsible one, never a little excitement." I felt humiliated. I tried to redirect the conversation and suggested we move on to dinner, but Emily wasn't done. She continued to make remarks comparing me unfavorably to her, like she had been the creative genius in the family and I had just been the obedient shadow. I reached a breaking point. I told her that this wasn't a competition and that it was my mom's birthday, and we should celebrate her, not dig up old grievances. My mom, however, seemed to be enjoying the drama. Emily rolled her eyes and said, "Of course, the perfect little sister always has to ruin the fun." That was it for me. I got up, told everyone I was leaving, grabbed my gift, and walked out. My mom called me later to say that I overreacted and that Emily was just joking, but I felt disrespected and emotionally attacked in my own home. Now comes the wedding part. Emily recently got engaged to her boyfriend, Tom, 27M. The wedding is in 6 months, and the invitations were sent out last week. I was included, but when I saw the RSVP date, I hesitated. I've been thinking about whether I can actually attend after what happened at my mom's birthday. My sister and I haven't spoken much since the incident, and I don't feel like our relationship is healed. I brought up my concerns to my mother, explaining that I didn't feel comfortable attending the wedding if Emily continued her pattern of putting me down or creating drama. My mother said I was being selfish and that family weddings are about coming together and putting aside differences. I told her that showing up just to be publicly humiliated or compared again wasn't something I could do, and that if she wanted me to be at the wedding, she needed to address Emily's behavior beforehand. My mom refused and said I was overreacting. I also spoke to a few extended family members who know both Emily and me. Some say I should just attend and be the bigger person, while others understand that the birthday incident was really hurtful and that attending the wedding might open the door to more humiliation. I genuinely want to support my sister, but I can't shake the feeling that if I go, I will be seen as the villain for refusing to celebrate her happy moment, even though my feelings are valid. Emily has also hinted that if I don't attend, she'll be upset and might confront me at family gatherings, which makes me even more anxious. I'm currently leaning toward not attending and sending a gift instead, but part of me feels guilty and fears being labeled the bad sister. On the other hand, I also don't want to compromise my mental health and dignity by putting myself in a situation where I could be publicly shamed again. So, Reddit AITA for considering skipping my sister's wedding because of the way she treated me at my mother's birthday. AITA for refusing to let my sister involve my kids in her life lessons experiments. This all started about 6 months ago, but I think it goes back years. I have 2 kids, ages 8 and 10, and I'm very protective of them, especially when it comes to how they're exposed to the world. My younger sister, Emily, is 32, and she has always been very unconventional. She's always had ideas about parenting, education, and psychology that border on experimental, and she likes to test them on people she knows. Over the years, I've politely declined most of her helpful advice, but things escalated recently. Emily recently got certified as some sort of child development coach. It's not a traditional teaching certification or anything, but she insists that it's legit and that her methods are based on cutting-edge psychological studies. She reached out to me last summer and said she wanted to run a behavioral experiment with my kids. According to her, it would help them build emotional intelligence, problem-solving skills, and resilience. The catch was that she wanted to observe them at home, record some of their interactions, and try out her methods on them for a few weeks. She said it would be like a real-life social experiment, and that she would handle all the logistics. She promised nothing would harm them, physically or emotionally. I was immediately uncomfortable. I tried to explain that my kids are not subjects in anyone's experiment, even if it sounds scientific. I told her that while I appreciate her enthusiasm, this was crossing a line. Emily argued that it wasn't harmful, that other parents let their children participate in studies all the time, and that she would even provide snacks and fun activities as part of the experiment. She kept pushing, saying it was a rare opportunity for my kids to unlock their potential. I stood firm and said no. Emily didn't take no well. She started sending long emails detailing exactly how she would conduct the experiment, including hypothetical scenarios she would put the kids in, like ethical dilemmas and peer pressure simulations. I noticed that many of these scenarios seemed stressful or manipulative, and she was being very detailed about the emotional responses she expected to provoke. At that point, I blocked her emails and told her I would not discuss it further. About 2 weeks later, Emily showed up at my house unannounced. She brought a stack of worksheets, some role-playing props, and a binder with notes. She said she wanted to observe my parenting in action and train the kids to handle conflicts better. I told her she was not allowed to be here and that she needed to leave. She argued that this was educational, but I insisted and eventually called her out. I said she was crossing boundaries and that her methods were inappropriate for my children. She stormed out and sent me a text saying I was holding the kids back and that I was afraid of their potential. Since then, she has been posting things on social media about child psychology and life experiments, with subtle hints about kids she knows who are not ready for real growth. I have no doubt she's talking about my kids, even though she hasn't named them. My parents and other siblings are divided. Some think I overreacted and should let her be involved because she's family, while others agree that Emily has no right to manipulate my children for her own experiments. A few weeks ago, she tried to guilt-trip me during a family dinner, asking me if I really wanted to deprive my kids of real-world experience and emotional intelligence boot camp. I calmly said yes, I did want to protect my kids and that her ideas are not suitable for them. She got visibly angry, accused me of being controlling, and left the dinner early. After that, our parents started pressuring me to let Emily have a chance, saying that she just wants to help and that I'm making her look bad in the family. I reiterated that my children's well-being comes first and that I would not allow them to be subjects in an unapproved experiment. Emily has since stopped speaking to me directly, but she still posts on social media. Last weekend, she posted something that seemed like it was aimed at me, saying some parents are too scared to let their kids grow and that fear limits potential. I ignored it, but my kids asked me why Aunt Emily is being mean. I explained that sometimes adults have different ideas about what is best, and that it's okay to protect yourself and your family from people, even family, if they don't respect boundaries. I've had friends tell me I'm right to protect my kids, but I feel guilty because Emily has always been part of the family, and I don't want my kids to feel like they're missing out. I also feel a little guilty because I know she genuinely believes she's helping, but I can't shake the feeling that her experiments could really stress or confuse my children. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister involve my kids in her so-called life experiments, even though she claims it's educational and backed by psychological studies. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house during the holidays after he insulted my career. I, 34F, have always been close with my younger sister, Lily, 28F. Growing up, we had a typical sibling dynamic. Lots of love, but occasional friction. Over the years, I've worked hard to build a career as a landscape architect. I've always been proud of what I do, even though it doesn't come with a six-figure salary. I enjoy the work, the creative process, and the satisfaction of seeing a project come to life. About 6 months ago, Lily started dating someone named Mark, 30M. At first, I tried to be welcoming, but Mark rubbed me the wrong way early on. He has this habit of constantly belittling anyone who doesn't have what he considers a high-power career. He works in finance and makes a significant amount of money, so he sees himself as accomplished in every sense. The first time we met, he asked me what I did for a living, and when I told him, he said, "Oh, that's cute." So you make art for people's yards. He laughed it off like he was joking, but it didn't feel like a joke. I shrugged it off and didn't comment, but the pattern repeated over the next few months. Whenever my work comes up, he makes a little jab about how landscaping isn't real work or how it must be nice to have a hobby as a job. I tried to avoid confrontation because I didn't want to alienate my sister, but it's been building up. Now, here's the situation that sparked the conflict. My parents and I usually host Christmas at my house. I live in a moderate-sized townhouse, and we have enough space for my parents, my sister, and my small dog. Lily called me a few weeks ago and asked if Mark could stay over this year. I said I would need to think about it. I mulled it over and eventually decided to decline. I explained to Lily that I didn't feel comfortable having him in my home because of the way he has treated me in the past. I reminded her that he has repeatedly insulted my career and that I didn't want to deal with that kind of negativity during the holidays. I emphasized that I love her and I'm happy for her, but I just can't have someone who disrespects me staying in my home for an extended period. Lily exploded. She accused me of being overly sensitive and said I was being unfair to Mark. She said he was just teasing and that I should learn to take a joke. I tried to explain that this isn't about being sensitive. It's about being treated with respect, especially in my own home. She then accused me of ruining Christmas and suggested I should just suck it up for the sake of family harmony. I didn't budge. I told her she and Mark could still come, but they would need to book a hotel. She called me selfish, and my parents got involved, saying I was making a big deal out of nothing and that I should just let him stay to avoid drama. I tried explaining that the drama would actually come from having him under my roof. The conversation ended with Lily yelling at me and saying that she might just spend Christmas with Mark's family instead. I felt hurt, frustrated, and a little guilty, but I also feel like I'm standing up for myself. Since then, my sister has barely spoken to me. Our parents keep sending me passive-aggressive messages about how I'm being difficult. I honestly don't feel like I've done anything wrong. I have a right to say who stays in my home, and I shouldn't have to host someone who repeatedly insults me. But part of me wonders if I'm overreacting and letting my pride get in the way of family peace. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house because of how he's treated me. For context, I have never insulted Mark or spoken poorly about him behind his back. Lily and Mark are in a committed relationship, but they aren't married yet. My parents have a big house, but typically prefer celebrating at my townhouse for convenience. Mark's comments have always been framed as jokes, but they sting every time. I'm open to hosting Lily if Mark is not staying, and I've said that multiple times. I'm prepared for tension this holiday season, but I don't know if I truly crossed a line or if my boundaries are reasonable. AITA for refusing to let my in-laws stay in my house after they decided to help remodel my kitchen. So, I, 32F, recently bought my first house with my husband, Mark, 34M. We've been married for 6 years, but we had been renting together before this. Buying the house was a huge step for us, both emotionally and financially, because we live in a very expensive area. We worked hard to save for a down payment and chose a house that needed some renovations so we could make it our own without spending a fortune. One of the first projects we wanted to tackle was the kitchen, which was outdated and very cramped. We decided to do most of the work ourselves because hiring contractors would have been way beyond our budget, and honestly, we enjoyed DIY projects. A few weeks after closing, Mark's parents, Susan, 62F, and Robert, 65M, came over for a casual visit. At first, everything was normal. We showed them the house and explained what our plans were for the kitchen. That's when things started to go sideways. Susan immediately commented that our plans weren't practical and suggested they should come over and help us do it right. At first, I thought she meant giving advice, so I didn't think much of it. But over the next few days, they kept making vague comments about how helping hands could speed things up. Then Mark, who tends to avoid confrontation, casually mentioned they were thinking of staying for a while to help with the kitchen. I nearly choked. My parents and I have always been private, and the thought of having someone stay in our house indefinitely while we were trying to do one of the most stressful projects of our lives was overwhelming. I told Mark that I didn't think that was a good idea, but he brushed it off, saying that they were only trying to be helpful. I reminded him that we had budgeted time and space for just the two of us to work on the renovation, and that having extra people in the house would only complicate things. Mark agreed in principle, but didn't want to upset his parents. The next weekend, they showed up with suitcases and a "we'll only stay a week or two" attitude. I had tried to gently explain that we couldn't accommodate overnight guests because of the ongoing renovation, but Susan waved me off and said we'd figure it out. She and Robert immediately started reorganizing our kitchen cabinets, moving tools, and offering better ideas for the layout. I tried to stay patient, but every time I opened my mouth, Susan would cut me off with phrases like, "Oh, don't worry, dear, we've done this 100 times," or "you'll thank us later." Within 2 days, the situation escalated. They had moved half the furniture into the garage to make room for workstations, started throwing away things they didn't like, and made a list of additional purchases we needed for the renovation. I felt completely disrespected and blindsided. I told Mark that I wanted them to leave because this was our house and our project, and I didn't want anyone interfering. Mark asked me to calm down and suggested we compromise by letting them stay one more night. That night was miserable. Susan critiqued every little thing I did while cooking dinner, while Robert spent hours trying to fix our plumbing, even though we had planned to hire a licensed plumber for the more complicated work. The next morning, I finally said enough was enough. I told them very clearly that their presence was not helping and that they needed to leave. Susan got very defensive, saying that I was ungrateful and that they were just trying to be good in-laws. Robert chimed in that he was only trying to teach me a few things about home repair and that I was being overly sensitive. I stood firm and reminded them that our house was not a hotel and that we were not comfortable with them staying there uninvited. Mark backed me up this time, which surprised me, but his parents were visibly offended. They packed their things in silence and left, but not without several pointed comments about how I was cold and unwelcoming. After they left, Mark and I talked for hours. He admitted that he had been worried about upsetting his parents and didn't want to cause tension, but he agreed that their stay was inappropriate. He also said that he realized I was right to set boundaries and that our house is our sanctuary. Despite this, my in-laws have been sending Mark messages almost daily complaining about how rude I was and how they were just trying to help. They have even suggested that Mark should convince me to be more flexible if I want to maintain family harmony. Mark has told them he won't do that, but the tension has been noticeable at family events ever since. Now, a few of Mark's siblings have weighed in and said that maybe I overreacted and that my in-laws were only trying to bond with me and be helpful. Some of my friends think I was completely justified. I understand wanting to help family, but I truly felt like my boundaries and autonomy were being violated. The house is ours, the renovation is ours, and having them there felt like an invasion rather than support. So, AITA for refusing to let my in-laws stay in my house to help with the kitchen renovation, even though they thought they were being helpful. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.